The last photo I had of our family farm was taken the day I deployed. I'm standing by the old oak tree, my military uniform crisp and new, while Grandma Helen sits in her favorite rocking chair beside me. Behind us stretches the endless green of the Morgan family farm, 300 acres that have been in our family for 5 generations. "Don't worry about the farm, Jake," Grandma had said, squeezing my hand. "Everything will be here when you get back." That was 3 years ago. Grandma passed away 6 months into my deployment, and everything changed. I learned about the farm sale through a Facebook message from my childhood friend Tommy, who still lived in town. "Thought you should know," he wrote. "They're putting up the sold sign today. Your sister says it's a done deal." I stared at my phone screen in the dim light of my barracks, trying to make sense of the words. The farm couldn't be sold. It was protected by Grandma's will, held in trust for the next generation. My sister Megan knew that. But when I called home, nobody answered. Not my parents, not Megan, not even my brother-in-law Steve. Finally, I reached our family lawyer, Mr. Peterson. "I'm sorry, Jake," he said, his voice heavy with something more than simple regret. "As far as the current will shows, your sister has full authority to sell. She's been managing the property since your grandmother's passing." "The current will?" I repeated. "What do you mean?" There was a long pause. "Perhaps we should have this conversation when you're back stateside." But I wasn't due home for another 8 months. By then, according to Tommy's updates, the farm would be carved up into luxury housing lots, with my sister and her husband planning to build their dream home on the choicest parcel. I spent my free time making calls, sending emails, trying to understand how this could happen. The farm had been Grandma's pride and joy, her legacy to all of us. She'd spent hours telling me stories about our ancestors who'd worked that land, showing me the old photographs, teaching me every corner of the property. "Your sister says you abandoned the family," my mother finally told me during one tense phone call, "that you chose the military over your responsibilities here." "I'm serving my country," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, and Grandma supported that decision. "Well, Megan's been here, handling everything while you play soldier across the world. She deserves to make these decisions." I wanted to point out that handling everything had apparently meant letting the farm's operations decline while planning its sale. But what was the point? In my family's eyes, I was the deserter, the one who'd chosen to leave rather than stay and work the land. What they didn't know was that Grandma had visited me the night before I deployed, bringing with her a sealed envelope. "Keep this safe," she'd said, her aged hands trembling slightly as she handed it over. "Open it only if something happens to me and the farm is threatened. Promise me, Jake." I promised, tucking the envelope into my deployment bag without opening it. It had stayed there through 3 combat zones and countless missions, slightly wrinkled but still sealed. Now, reading Tommy's latest update about the developer's timeline, I finally opened it. Inside was a letter written in Grandma's elegant hand and a second envelope marked "Official," to be opened only in the presence of Mr. James Peterson, attorney at law. The letter started simply, "My dearest Jake, if you're reading this, then my fears about your sister have proven correct." What followed was a detailed account of Grandma's suspicions about Megan and Steve's plans for the farm, along with instructions about a second will, one that had been properly filed with an attorney in the neighboring county. I read the letter 3 times, then made another call, this time to a different lawyer. The next few months passed in a blur of legal correspondence and careful planning. I arranged for leave to coincide with the property closing, timing it so I'd arrive home the day before. Nobody knew I was coming. I'd asked Tommy to keep my return quiet. The morning of the closing, I stood in front of the mirror in my hotel room, straightening my dress uniform. 3 combat tours had left their mark. I was leaner, harder than the young man in that last photo by the oak tree. But Grandma's letter was still crisp in my pocket, along with several other key documents. My phone buzzed. A text from Tommy. "They're all at Peterson's office. Big celebration planned for after." I smiled, thinking of the other celebration that had been quietly arranged. Sometimes karma needed military precision to work properly. The scene at the law office was exactly as I'd imagined. Megan holding court in an expensive designer suit, Steve looking smug in his banker's best. My parents sitting proudly by as their daughter prepared to sign away our heritage. The developer's representatives checking their watches, eager to finalize the deal. Nobody noticed me slip into the back of the room. Mr. Peterson saw me but kept his face carefully neutral, Our earlier phone conversations had prepared him for this moment. Now then, he began, shuffling papers importantly, if everyone's ready to proceed with the sale of the Morgan family farm. Actually, I said clearly, stepping forward, I don't think we are. The silence that followed my words was absolute. Megan's face went from shock to angry in the space of a heartbeat. Jake, what are you doing here? Protecting our grandmother's real wishes, I replied, pulling out the sealed envelope she'd given me. Mr. Peterson, I believe you'll want to see this. My sister's face had gone from angry to uncertain. What are you talking about? We have the will right here. The farm passes to me as the resident family member. You have a will, I corrected her. Just not the final one. Our family lawyer's hands shook slightly as he opened the envelope I'd handed him. His eyes widened as he read, and I saw the moment he recognized what he was holding. This, he looked up at me, then at Megan. This changes everything. Part 2. The real will was dated just 2 weeks before Grandma's death, properly witnessed and notarized. As Mr. Peterson read it aloud, I watched the color drain from my sister's face. I, Helen Morgan, being of sound mind and body, hereby declare this to be my final will and testament, revoking all previous wills and codicils. The key provisions were exactly as Grandma had outlined in her letter to me. The farm wasn't just left to the family, it had been placed in an irrevocable trust, with strict conditions about its use and sale. The Morgan family farm shall be maintained as a working agricultural property. Mr. Peterson read, his voice growing stronger. Any sale or development of the land must be approved unanimously by all living grandchildren. Furthermore, any grandchild who serves in the military shall have primary residence rights upon their return. This is ridiculous, Megan interrupted, her voice shrill. That will was lost, Dad told me himself. Lost or hidden? I asked quietly. Grandma made copies. She knew what you were planning, Megan. She knew about your meetings with developers even before I deployed. The developers' lawyers were already packing their briefcases, recognizing that this sale wasn't happening today. Steve's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. You can't do this, he sputtered. We've already started construction on our new house. Actually, I pulled out another document you haven't. The building permits were denied yesterday. Seems the environmental impact study was incomplete. That had been Tommy's contribution. As the county's environmental assessment officer, he'd been happy to take an extra close look at the development plans. The endangered wetland species he discovered on the proposed construction site was just icing on the cake. My mother finally found her voice. Jake, be reasonable. Your sister has put years of work into managing this property. Managing it into the ground, you mean? I countered. I've seen the books, Mom. The mysterious equipment failures, the necessary loans against the property, the gradual selling off of livestock, all carefully orchestrated to make it look like the farm wasn't viable anymore. Megan's face flushed. You don't know what you're talking about. You weren't here. No, but Grandma's old farm manager was. Remember Carl? The one you fired a week after Grandma died? He kept records of everything. Carl had been more than happy to share those records when I contacted him. Years of suspicious decisions, all documented in his meticulous handwriting. Equipment that was sabotaged rather than simply broken. Profitable contracts mysteriously canceled. A systematic dismantling of the farm's operations to justify its eventual sale. The trust has very specific requirements, I continued, nodding to Mr. Peterson. The farm must be maintained as a working agricultural property. Any trustee who fails to meet these obligations can be removed. Removed. Steve stood up so quickly his chair fell over. You smug little. I'd be careful with threats, I interrupted calmly, especially given the fraud investigation that's about to begin. That stopped him cold. What fraud? The loan applications, I said, pulling out more papers. The ones where you inflated the farm's problems to secure financing. The money that mysteriously disappeared into accounts controlled by your real estate development company. The trust attorneys are very interested in reviewing all of that. My father, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly looked years older. Steve? Is this true? But my brother-in-law was already heading for the door, phone in hand, probably calling his own lawyer. It's not just the farm, I told my stunned family. Grandma left letters explaining everything. She knew Megan and Steve were planning this even before she got sick. That's why she set up the trust, why she made sure I had copies of everything before I deployed. But why didn't she say anything? My mother asked, her voice small. She did. You just didn't want to hear it. You were too busy believing Megan's version of events, too quick to accept that I'd abandoned my responsibilities rather than chosen to serve my country. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. There's more. Mrs. Morgan left specific instructions about the farm's operations in the event of attempted mismanagement. The next part was my favorite. The trust didn't just protect the farm. It established a training program for veterans interested in agricultural careers. Grandma had worked with several veterans organizations before her death, setting up everything so the farm could become a place of healing and new beginnings. She called it Project Legacy. I explained to my shell-shocked family, a way to honor both our family's farming heritage and military service. The first group of veteran trainees would arrive next month. The old bunkhouse was being renovated to accommodate them, and Carl had agreed to come back as lead instructor. Local farmers had already pledged support, remembering how Grandma had helped them during tough times. So what happens now? Megan asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Now, you and Steve have 24 hours to turn over all farm-related documents to the trust's attorneys. After that, the fraud investigation begins. How much trouble you face depends on how cooperative you are. And the farm will be what Grandma always wanted, a working farm that helps people heal and grow. You're welcome to be part of that, but only if you accept that things are going to be done right from now on. My parents sat in stunned silence as Mr. Peterson continued reading the will's provisions. Each revelation seemed to age them further, the depth of Grandma's planning, the extent of Megan and Steve's deception, the future they'd nearly allowed to be destroyed. Later that evening, I stood by the old oak tree, now illuminated by the setting sun. The developer's equipment had already been removed, their stakes and markers pulled up. Tomorrow, Carl would help me assess what needed to be done to restore the farm to working condition. Tommy joined me, holding 2 beers. Hell of a homecoming, he said, handing me one. Grandma would have loved it, I replied, thinking of her final letter. She always said the truth has a way of coming out. What about your sister? I took a long drink before answering. The trust's lawyers found most of the missing money. If she and Steve cooperate, pay it back, they might avoid criminal charges. But they'll never have control of the farm again. My phone buzzed. A message from one of my military buddies who'd helped me plan all this. 4 more veterans had applied to the training program, all highly qualified. The farm would soon be full of people who understood both sacrifice and service. Your grandmother was something else, Tommy said, looking out over the fields. Setting all this up, making sure the truth would come out even after she was gone. I pulled out the last photo taken of us together, studying her face, the wisdom in her eyes, the slight smile that now seemed knowing rather than just kind. She used to tell me that land knows its true family, I said. Guess she made sure it ended up with the right ones. Over the next year, the Morgan family farm transformed. The veterans training program flourished, bringing new life and purpose to the old buildings. Local schools started bringing students for educational programs about agriculture and conservation. The farm's products, now certified organic, commanded premium prices at regional markets. Megan and Steve moved away after repaying the misappropriated funds, their dreams of luxury development replaced by the humiliation of exposed fraud. My parents, slowly accepting their role in enabling the deception, began volunteering with the veterans programs, finding some measure of redemption in helping others. As for me, I finally hung up my uniform, trading it for work boots and tractor keys. Some nights, sitting in Grandma's old rocking chair beneath the oak tree, I swear I can hear her laugh on the evening breeze. Pleased that her beloved farm has become exactly what she envisioned. The final page of her letter to me had said it best. Remember, Jake, true inheritance isn't just about property or money. It's about values, about doing what's right even when it's hard. You inherited more than just a farm. You inherited the responsibility to protect what matters, to help others grow, to turn darkness into light. That's the real legacy of the Morgan family farm. Looking out over the fields where veteran trainees now learn to coax life from the soil, where healing happened in harmony with the seasons, I knew she'd been right. Some inheritances are measured not in acres or dollars, but in lives transformed and hopes renewed. The end.